if you really think about it, we all need a mental health day. We need more than a mental health day because life is full of disasters and complications. Someone dear to you dies. I mean, we're not programmed to just work and ignore. I mean, if you ignore it, you're going to like cause more spiraling, I would suspect.
Yes, I think our digital lives have created more mental stress,
Yeah, I think
right?
so. And I think it's one of the biggest problems we're up against.
That's a very big social problem. And then we got COVID, that
Yes.
added definitely a huge burden. And now we have these disruptive general purpose technologies looming over our head.
I want you to be a commercial for that with that voice.
over So we are more and more living from a fear-based motivation. There's blurring of this health issue, the physical health, the mental health, because obviously mental health at an extreme can create physical disease, right? And then
Yes.
there's the financial health that is connected with all that. I actually was hoping that we would have seen some neobank that goes beyond adding health benefits by integrating insurance in the app, or maybe integrating some credit product for medical needs. Hello, and today is a delightful, unique episode. I have a special guest, Mary Wisniewski, who is one of the top FinTech creators. Right now, she's at Cornerstone Advisors, editor at large. We know you, Mary, from all your previous creations, and I don't believe that AI is going to take away your creative juices. I hope that you're not fearing that. I hope that you're looking at AI and saying, yes, I can do more and better video editing with you, right?
Well, we're almost sort of, maybe not that optimistic, but not hiding and ducking and covering my face either.
So let's forget about AI. We don't want to talk about AI. This episode is not about AI. It is about yoga and fintech. And this is a connecting point, not the only connecting point. I'm sure we will find other ones. But what is yoga for you, Mary?
Oh my gosh. So yoga, I'll caveat it by saying I'm an infrequent yoga person, but when I do yoga, I go on these like what's called them a fender bender. And so yoga to me, I just went to the Galapagos Islands on a yoga retreat about a month ago, and I'll describe what yoga is to me through that trip. And it was just like I spend day after day in front of a screen typing. When I'm not at my day job, I'm often reading or writing. So I'm still like sitting in place. So yoga to me is like freeing, freeing myself really, and like opening myself to nature. And also just it really helps my body feel better. Like I get so tense and yoga like releases that for me. So it's just kind of a beautiful antidote to corporate work.
It's an interesting way to put it. For me, it all started as a tool to fight the imbalance of using my mind too much. So
Oh,
getting out of my mind.
yes. Well, that too. It's a beautiful release of all the brain, like, do this,
Yeah,
do that. Yes.
yeah. All that hopefully creative activity that goes on in the mind, but definitely it's also a way to get the offline, right?
Yes.
You can't
Yes.
be online while you're doing a downward facing dog or something
Let's
like
hope
that.
that. Let's hope that one of the recent last sessions I was at, I was literally looking at a bunch of horses as I was doing the moves. And I'm like, wow, this is just, next level.
Ah, yeah. I must say that obviously yoga is much adopted You find it in most gyms. It's a practice that some see it as a physical exercise, but it's also an energy and spiritual exercise and a mental exercise and a mental tool. So how do you think that fits with FinTech?
Well, if FinTech, if it realizes its ambitions, it's, helping people build financial resilience, which of course frees your mind of all the burden that is created by financial obstacles. I think, and also I'm curious if you're seeing this too, because I've been noticing some of the FinTech apps in the States, not like boldly, but like a little bit, are starting to think about mental health things within their app experience. So it's sort of like, how do you feel about this transaction would be an example popping up in an app. So I'm really curious of like how the mental health element will play out in FinTech. I'm sure it will get bizarre, but I'm also hopeful.
I mean, if you think of it, health there's financial health, there's physical health, there's mental health. And clearly, as you said, a lot of employers, especially the large employers that are trying to design employee benefits, they are shyly including wellness, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of the survey-based studies are showing that the younger generation cares a lot more about those. But I'm not sure. I think that the mid and older generation cares too, because
I think so. Well, I think there's this tension because I hear sides of like maybe someone older mocking Gen Z for being like, I need a mental health day. But if you really think about it, we all need a mental health day. We need more than a mental health day because life is full of disasters and complications. Someone dear to you dies. I mean, we're not programmed to just work and ignore. I mean, if you ignore it, you're going to like cause more spiraling, I would suspect.
yes, I think our digital lives have created more mental stress.
Yeah, I think
Right.
so. And I think it's one of the biggest problems we're up against.
That's a very big social problem. And then we got COVID. That
Yes.
added definitely a huge burden. And now we have these disruptive general purpose technologies looming over our head.
I want you to be a commercial for that with that voice.
over. So we are more and more living from a fear-based motivation. There's blurring of this health issue, the physical health, the mental health, because obviously mental health at an extreme can create physical disease, right? And then
Yes.
there's the financial health that is connected with all that. I actually was hoping that we would have seen some neobank that goes beyond adding health benefits by integrating insurance in the app, or maybe integrating some credit product for medical needs, especially in the US where the system is, there's no social system and there's a bigger need there for medical loans. But we haven't really seen anything like that where it's wellness rather than the disease element.
Yeah, I can't think of too many examples at all, maybe not even one. I am following one startup called Charlie, which is a neobank for, in theory, people over 62. And one of the things to draw people there is that they'll advance Social Security benefits by a few days, maybe even more than a few days. But part of it is getting customers discounts on their prescriptions. I think it's supposed to be automated through the debit card. And so that's not an expression of what you just described, but one of the founders' background is healthcare. So I'm really I'm curious of how that neobank might develop something. You see fraud prevention, you could argue that what helps a little, well, it's trying to tackle mental health, and with an app like being used by an adult child to look out for their parent and, elder abuse type of things. So you could say that, but like in terms of like, yeah, health stuff, like doctor stuff, I really haven't seen much of that beyond like the loans, as you say.
And as longevity is a very big trend and issue.
Oh, I've been worried about this. I'm like, oh no, I want to live long enough, but like not past that point of like, you know?
Yes, but what will happen, how are we going to take care of our financial health if we're going to live much longer?
I don't know. I don't know because it's hard enough to retire around your 60s now just because of the money thing. So to live longer, I mean, that just we're heading what feels like it could be a complete disaster. But I don't know. How do you feel about it? How are you thinking about longevity and finances?
Well, there's two scenarios in my head. One is the scenario where AI takes most of our jobs, so we
Mhm.
don't have jobs. And the solution would be a universal basic income. That's one solution. So what would that mean? That would really change everything in terms of how we invest. Imagine if somebody's born, they get a certain amount, a fixed amount when they're born, and then they get a monthly allowance that covers their needs. And then they create if they want to create, but they don't have the anxiety of covering their basic financial needs.
Can you imagine if people didn't have anxiety over covering their basic financial needs? I wonder what that would do for creative endeavors, because it would like free your mind up from this like thing that you have to be focused on day after day if you're worried about essentials. To not worry about that, I just wonder what else could be created as a consequence.
Well, why wouldn't people be creative? Are you saying that those that are creative today are all people that are driven by basic financial needs? I mean, is that
No, I'm just saying like if you don't have to be stressed about money, that frees brain space to think about other things.
you don't
Yeah,
have to be stressed about the basic needs of money,
right.
which is
Yeah.
whatever, housing and so
No,
on.
because in that model, you're like, I gotta grab this gig right here to make this extra bill. I have to take a double shift.
Or I want to have this big family, or I want to have this big sailing,
Yeah,
or I want to have this big farm, whatever the dream is.
yeah.
And it doesn't mean that you're not going to create. See, this also touches on other philosophical issues. We're all trained to believe that we have to earn, because if we don't earn, we're not worthy. We have grown up in this type of society, generations and generations. And it's become one of our beliefs. That's why we say, if you're not working, you're lazy,
Yeah.
right? And even if we don't say it, because it might not be, I don't want to hurt your feelings, or it's not politically correct, that's our really subconscious belief.
Oh, absolutely. And it's certainly the belief that's pervasive and for a typical business person.
Right. And in a society, if you have family and kids, you want them to become successful. In today's world, what does successful mean? That they can earn at least respectfully
I
living,
like the way you put that.
right?
I like that phrase. Yes.
That's what it is. And if they can't, if they're not willing, that's what a failure is. Somebody who cannot earn their livelihood.
Yeah.
So these are built-in beliefs in our society, and we've grown up to solve problems in fintech for those don't have access to the ecosystem or what is needed to be able to get a job, to be able to be in a productive economy. Think of emerging markets, right? We've put all our effort in creating that, but why are we not putting our effort in FinTech to help people earn? We're not helping people earn.
I know, and I'm so glad you bring this up because I have loved covering personal financial management tools over the year, but this comes up a lot. I started a podcast myself last month called Money Isn't Everything. One of my first guests, Ethan, who founded a startup called Digit, which like kind of made building a savings habit fun. And also it was like set it and forget it in terms of like it would move how much money it thought you could afford every few days, sort of thing. He said he was so disappointed by what FinTech has accomplished over the 10 years, and that the thing that accomplished the most was the pandemic in terms of boosting savings. So like that gap, it just points to people need more income.
People need more income, and people need to earn more.
Yes.
That's it. And the financial services haven't done a lot about that. Of course, you can say if you have money, then fintechs and financial services can help you grow that money.
Mm-hmm.
But
You
how
need money.
to get the money
to start that journey, yeah.
in the first place, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when, let's say you have a mortgage, you lose your job, you can't pay the mortgage, the bank maybe do something like extend your payments, maybe help you somehow for a limited time, but
Mm-hmm.
they're not going to help you find another job.
No, it'd be rare. I mean, you see some apps, I think they're working with a startup called Steady, and that like helps people find gig work, for example, but not, I mean, full-time work. No, they're not doing that. And I know a lot of people would argue it's not their responsibility, but
No, it's not a question of
yeah.
responsibility. It's a question of how you think of the business model and the ecosystem that you're building.
Yeah.
Because if we think of it as an ecosystem, like we think Block X Square has an ecosystem for consumers and an ecosystem for merchants.
Mhm.
Why not have an ecosystem that has to do with credit and then how businesses and people grow their businesses, give them solutions when they have these problems through third parties.
I mean, I would love it. I would love to see that development, but I'm not aware of developments like that. I've lost my job in the past. First off, it's shocking. Second, you immediately go into, oh, I'm going to drain my savings if you have savings, and then your life can be undone just like that.
Correct. And our industry is the core of any economy, but the only way that it's looking to facilitate growth is through credit, right? And I think that there's quite a bit with merchants and businesses, but not at the individual level.
That sounds fair. That sounds fair.
Right? And the question is, do we have now the technology that we could do that? Because you could say it's impossible, it's not a good business. The unit economics of taking care of individuals and their financial strategy it's just impossible. But now, maybe it is possible.
I would never, what's the cliche that I love so much? Never say never.
Yeah.
And I tend to believe it. Yes.
Do you think that this could be like a private banking service? If you're, somebody ultra wealthy, at least 10 million or 50 million or maybe a billion here in Switzerland at a private bank, I'm sure that they have all sorts of services that they can provide. Although, again, I know that there was a startup called Longevity Bank.
Oh, I've heard that name. What does that
Yeah.
bank do?
I haven't heard what has happened to them.
Okay.
Because I think it was before COVID that they had launched, and their idea was to have this card. It's like a membership that gives you access to all these wellness tools and coaches, and so you can take care of your life, so the possibility of having a disease is low. So basically your mental and physical health in a preventative way is taken care of through this card, this
That
membership.
sounds so interesting to me because I know, I mean, of course, like a neobank model is under attack, but I would have to think that would have a wide audience, or maybe it's just because I live in California, but that feels like an interesting model.
It is an interesting model. The main idea is, why should these two lives of ours that are basically the most important aspects, why should they be siloed and disjoint completely?
Such a good question, such a big question. Well, I guess it's a personal decision too, right? There would be some people, probably a sizable amount of people, who would never want to mix those two
Aspects.
data sources because it would just be like a hazard to them. But there's all kinds of people who would. I mean, if we go back to Gen Z, I feel like their life and their work life is more interconnected.
Yeah, I really think that this blurring of the wellness industry and the financial services industry should have happened. Whether it should have started maybe in the employee benefits package
Yeah.
in that subsector, but then become part of the rest of the world. I mean, come on, when I think of Robinhood, and everybody who knows me knows that I don't like Robinhood, although I'm not in the US and I haven't tried them. But it's like, did the world need zero commission trading? Paying $4.95 at charge for every trade, I think was a good thing. That way you and I wouldn't do 50 trades a day, right?
I mean, yeah, price aside, I couldn't keep with that.
Right. I mean, the
vision.
reason we haven't done a good job with our portfolios isn't because of the 495, although you can make the data show that, yes, commissions eat into your returns. But the big reason that we don't have good returns is because we're not making sound investment decisions. We're either underinvested. FinTech hasn't made people move cash, more cash into the markets. There's still
I didn't know that. That's interesting.
Yeah, there's still a lot of cash sitting around.
If
you look at cash sitting in deposits, that percentage has been reduced.
Right.
Because, suddenly it's free to invest. So it hasn't made a dent. And then we have other problems that haven't been solved.
Well, I want to go back to how you want the mental health connected to financial services, because or FinTech. Because I'm thinking about, I've worked at a few companies, and it's usually like, maybe I'll get connected to a free therapist, which I love when that's a perk. Usually there's like a fitness program. If you do so many workouts, there's some perk, or there's a club. But I wish I could be like, oh, and this is I can expense yoga classes as part of my contract or whatever. But what would you like to see develop? Like, what's your vision of the best case?
The vision is two or three things. One is that there is a measurable way of what are my wellness goals. So like you have financial goals, you have wellness goals. And then the employer or the provider helps you attain those goals.
Sounds great. I like that. I would work for that employer. Yeah.
Yeah. And wouldn't you pay a membership package? Like Robinhood gives you a gold card for $50 a month or a year. I don't remember, honestly. But there's a membership there, and then you get certain perks. Or Revolut has a membership, and you can get a SIM that works for your phone all across Europe, right? So there's different perks. Why don't we have wellness perks? Why aren't we helping people better their lives? It can be, I'm interested in my leadership skills
Mhm.
or whatever it is. There can be wellness goals. Identify one or two things that are important to people and
Mhm.
offer those.
Well, yeah, I'm racking my brain of like, have I seen more interesting programs? I don't know if I have. I have to feel like there's got to be a startup somewhere, probably in the US, that gives like, I have seen something like, here's your mystery amount of money that you can use in any way that you think will help you. I'm sure there's more caveats to it, but it's more like, hey, maybe you would use this for, wouldn't it be exactly wellness, but something I love to do is like, oh, you can take this class from your favorite author, for example, and you just, it's a lump sum, you can do as you see fit and sort of tie it to your day job, but it doesn't have to be. But I would think there's got to be startups that offer some kind of perk like that, but
Well, I mean, as we speak, I'm thinking of these tokens that
mhm,
are given. You can walk and earn sweat coins, and
mhm. Oh,
then
tell
those.
me more about that. Sweat coins. Yeah.
Yeah, I actually have that app, and you earn these sweat coins, and then you can use those sweat coins. You can either donate them or
Mhm,
you can use them. They have partnered with different providers that give, sunglasses at 70% discount. They give cosmetics at a huge discount, things like that. So
mhm.
you're rewarded basically in a way to, a different type of incentive to
I
walk.
Yeah. Oh, I like thinking about the different kinds of incentives. This isn't for mental health, but there's a startup here called Debbie that rewards people for paying down their debt,
That's an
which is,
excellent one.
yes, it's very
How
striking.
do they, what's the reward? They get some type of,
Cash, some kind of physical amount of money. And I think the main thing there, I'm sure it's not that high, but it's funded by the credit union partners. I think it's just like the psychological effect of like you open an app and you probably have sizable debt, but instead of like that shocking number, you're seeing, oh, I have a few rewards. So it's like making it more of an upbeat experience for something that is definitely
yeah.
not upbeat.
So here they have identified that in the US, the credit card problem is
Oh,
a big part,
terrible. And yeah,
right?
yes,
I think it broke what, $1 trillion,
that sounds right. That sounds,
something like that recently. So they're trying to do something like a behavioral thing.
of course, correct, but it's so hard because interest rates are so high. So if you're saddled with like credit card debt, it's really hard to untangle yourself from.
So those providers that care to solve that problem, I'm sure they understand that these people suffer mentally because of this problem.
Mhm. And that's what I'm curious more about. I've seen some research about how linked mental health and money are. I'm
Yes,
seeing in the US financial therapists are blooming, and I
yes,
think it's just
yes.
the therapy centered on,
Money psychologists or money coaches that are not like a financial advisor. It's
yeah.
money psychology.
Mm-hmm. Because I think, I mean, that's a huge thing. And then separate of that, back to income, someone with like a disability, I mean, what do you need to create for that person? Probably something more.
Yeah, but when we go to those points, we need different policies
Mhm,
to really help the private market take care of these special needs.
mhm.
'Cause otherwise, the private market just won't do it like that, right? I think that we have a financial problem and a mental health problem,
Mhm.
and they should be addressed together.
You just reminded me of a memory. There's a bank here that's bigger than what it once was when it was doing this, but it's called Umpqua. And in their branches, they used to host yoga classes. Probably the only bank that has done that in the
But
US.
yoga
Maybe that,
classes
that's a bold statement.
for their employees or for their
Or
customers?
customers. Their whole thing was like making a unique experience in their branches.
Okay.
I think they called them stores. I don't know. They didn't, I don't think branch was the word, but yeah, it was like including things like that for their customers.
Well, let's see. Imagine if banks are the ones that provide us with our AI companion for our financial life. Inevitably, these companions will understand our psychological problems, our mental problems, because they're connected.
I mean, in theory, they probably could, if they're going over someone's transactions, they could certainly see like gambling addiction. That would be something that would be easy to see. But isn't that wild? Actually, that made me a little nervous. My bank knows my mental health. That does make me, I don't know why, it makes me a little nervous. It would make me nervous to go into a branch. Let's say that, but I don't go to a branch. But
so we would like the anonymity, the service with the anonymity, because
yeah, I mean, maybe it's changing, but I think it's still hard. Money already is like still a taboo subject. It's sort of coming out of like, hey, how much do you make? You know, that's finally getting busted up. But like to then throw down the mental health stuff. I mean, I know younger people are changing this up too, but it's like, I feel like we're so trained to hide that, to keep that inside.
yes,
You're so vulnerable, and it would be to your institution. I mean,
but think of it that in many businesses, this issue of vulnerability, not around money, but around, I mean, generally vulnerability around issues of relationships, teamwork, leadership, all those coaches that go into businesses and work on aligning teams and managers. They're really getting close to their vulnerabilities.
that's true. Yeah, that's true.
Right? So if you have consultants that are coming in the company and really they know what's going on. Isn't it interesting that
it's really interesting because I'm picturing it. It does make me nervous just thinking about certain people in particular, because I feel like you just need such an empathetic person, and I don't know if I would always associate it with a consultant. Maybe, but it would need to be a really empathetic, compassionate person. Basically describing like you need sort of like the therapist in the room almost.
or a coach, like a life
coach, yeah.
Like a life coach, right? So why leave it? I mean, are we going to leave this to the AI companions? Because that's what is,
happening or could happen.
Is happening out there, where people are talking, because you can talk to these machines 24/7. You don't have the, I don't know, you don't feel that that person is going to, take your secrets or
that is
you,
yeah.
you.
I took this writing class, and there was a woman who was trying to write about rediscovering her parents who she never met. And she said she used ChatGPT, how to write the first email. And then she described the setting. And I think it's exactly that, because one, it's a very hard thing to know how to write that. And then here you can just give it to this technology.
You won't be judged.
You won't be judged. That's important.
That's a big one, because if she wrote a draft and said to ChatGPT, can you give me feedback, or can you enhance it? Can you correct it? There will be no judgment from ChatGPT. But if she gave it to you and me, she would feel our reaction to it. There, she doesn't feel. These are the issues that are interesting.
Fascinating. I'm so, this is the best chat. I love exploring.
It's we're really talking about how to take data, because we have data in finance and in health, but I guess we don't have data in mental health. We only have really.
We have some clues, but yes.
We have some clues, and I guess with these AI companions, they will gather more information about us, about our psychology, and what our inhibitions are, or our addictions. Quote, do I spend too much money going to restaurants? Do I like to buy too many shoes?
This is an area I like seeing. I don't think I've seen too many examples, but it's like the budgeting apps that let you say, I value this category. So maybe you say, I value food. So that naturally, even if it's like you're spending too much, but it's your value. So you spend more, and other things you spend less.
Yeah,
I love
yes, yeah, yeah.
my-
You know, you buy too many books, or you buy too many cosmetics, or what do you, but as you said, because if you have top three that you value, it's okay. But then why are you also spending
yeah,
these categories?
on the stuff you don't even really care about. And that's sometimes social pressure, friends, whatever. But I want to be more mindful about how I spend in terms of like these tie to my like life values.
So you're talking about changing the categories or assigning how they align
Yeah,
with
the
our
importance.
values in this current phase, because that can change too, right?
Yeah, it absolutely can change. And who's to say what's most important except the person living their life?
Yeah, but the AI will know all this without you
Yeah.
needing to check, just because pattern recognition immediately, right?
Mhm.
And right now, none of these budgeting apps are really having this conversational ability with insights that make it clear. They may give us some figures, whether you ask for a monthly or a quarterly breakdown of what you've done. You sit there and look at it, but are you going to change your behavior? That's
I wouldn't. I mean, I wouldn't. I think, but it would be that moment. I'm assuming be like the big reveal of like for me, it would be like food delivery. Like I don't really care about food that much, but I delivered a lot because I'm working a
yeah.
lot throughout the day and I don't really like to cook. So like to see that number would be horrifying. Would it change my behavior? I don't know. Probably not, because it's just one and done. So it's almost like feel bad about yourself and then keep on keeping on.
So you have to decide what you're really trying to accomplish. Are you trying to cut costs, or are you trying to change a behavior? The budgeting apps are not only for cost savings, it's really to understand also what you're doing unconsciously and
Yeah,
you want to change it.
right. Because all those swipes, I always use a card, even for small transactions. So, I don't think about it too much at all. So I'm not even like completely aware of like,
This, Mary, goes to the fact that with this digitalization, we have alienated ourselves from the physical,
yeah,
right? So it's become, as you said, we're just swiping as if it's
mhm,
monopoly, right?
yeah,
If you ask me at any given point, how much is on your credit card right now? I don't know,
yeah. I often am that same way.
right?
But I except I instinctually know like, oh, maybe I got carried away.
Yes,
Got carried
yes.
away. I'm feeling it in my heart.
You're still a good person. God, don't judge me, right?
Yeah.
I overdid it, but I'm still a good person.
Mhm.
It's interesting to observe that we are wishing for things
We
and
are.
they're not happening. Why is that? You think, is it because the capital and the ideas are coming from others that are just interested in a different perspective in what needs to be done?
Now that we're like having this conversation, I just feel like someone's got to be thinking about this, got to be building something like this.
Yeah.
They're two big trends. So what's stopping it?
Maybe it's the taboo and the lack of data.
Could be the lack of data, but I also think it could be a little bit of like, let me stay in my lane and do that well, or say I'm doing it well.
Yeah.
I feel like it could be that.
Why is, for example, when I think of some of the neo banks or Revolut comes to mind, and they're clearly getting into the leisure business and the travel
Mhm.
business. But why don't these have wellness stuff?
Well, I think you're revealing a gap that maybe will help some entrepreneur decide to get into this, because I do feel like wellness makes so much sense.
And I also think that there are certain FinTech entrepreneurs that have either closed down their startups or exited, and they have started wellness apps.
Mhm.
Because I guess the mental health issues of entrepreneurs in general
Oh,
is
terrible.
terrible. I spoke to Nectarios Lolios, who was the co-founder of a startup Bootcamp. He has
Okay.
a podcast focused on mental issues of entrepreneurs.
Mhm.
I mean, of course, it's some taboo issue, but the stress
Oh,
and
the stress and being responsible for people's livelihoods and like,
exactly, and
are you
then
making
having
payroll?
disease down your throat and
Ah, well,
and all of that.
you mentioned earlier, like whatever your dream is, maybe go to a farm. Well, I noticed some of the CEOs of startups then try their hand at working on a farm or something like that, thinking that will be the opposite experience, but that's really hard work too, just a different expression of it.
Exactly. So the mental health issue has to be integrated. Now that I think of it, it's also don't you find that at FinTech conferences there is some discussion about this issue, not of the for the entrepreneurs in the industry in general. Do you
I,
hear that?
I hear it. Last year I was at MX's event in Utah, and they put a lot of attention on like mental health issues causing money disasters. And also they put a lot of attention on like disease in general. So, but that was the first time where I'm like, oh, this is the content. Like this conference is around this content. Because normally I don't encounter it too much, but you might be going to more flavorful events.
Okay.
Than myself. I feel like the US is probably behind in this way, among other ways.
Behind I mean, I don't think that the US is behind in the mental health problem. Right.
No,
I mean,
definitely not
I don't
behind on the
know.
mental, but in terms of like talking about it on panels, at least in financial services circles. Now,
Yeah.
if you're going to a different kind
Yeah.
of conference, yes, that's
Yeah,
yes.
I think it was in Cyprus, the Cyprus FinTech Summit, that we had this panel. I guess the problem has to become more acute for this to be solved. Maybe that would be,
Doesn't become
I'd be
more acute.
sad.
It feels pretty acute. No, I think the problem is bold and big, so it's there. I think it's more just like when I think of typical financial services type, I don't really think of them like embracing well-being necessarily. FinTech's different, but it's still like if you think about like the typical event, the social activity is often drinking, right? It's not like occasionally there's like yoga or occasionally there's some like hike or something, but like it's just the cult there's like a culture clash almost.
There's a cultural clash, so that's very interesting. So the culture hasn't really changed because when
I think it is, but I think it needs to do more. And I think as it evolves, you've just described a beautiful place for people to develop a better product. So you've made me optimistic. I think this is an area that will be built for, and it's just a matter of when. Yeah, because if you think about it, I mean, it's still commodity industry, so everybody wants to come up with the next big thing that will set themselves apart.
every product, every financial product is becoming commoditized.
Well, and I don't mean to keep going back to Gen Z, but you can see like to be striking as a brand, it's almost like you have to bring a physical element to it. Like I know someone on TikTok is viral for reading the newspaper, like the physical newspaper. I feel like we're gonna get some throwbacks here to just be able to like stand out. I know like stuffing envelopes has come back in vogue for certain people as their budgeting hack. It's just,
I
like
know in the UK, because the inflation has really damaged the UK economy, plus Brexit, and they're starting to use physical cash for budgeting reasons.
yeah. Well, I think I saw, I forget if it was Hallmark or something, but it was like Venmo or something like Venmo was in a physical card, because you lose that emotional touch. You sort of lose something in the exchange.
Exactly. So imagine you go on a date, Mary, and instead of getting flowers, they send you digital flowers.
2 thumbs down. I hope I dump him, but I don't know. I once had a gentleman say, "What would you think of a guy who took you to like a free wine tasting as the date?" But I was like, I probably think that's funny.
Okay.
Mm.
But so any opinion on branches?
Just
Bank
like
branches?
bank branches, well, I don't think they're going away. I've never thought they're going away. I think it remains to be seen what's their purpose. Of course, getting a mortgage, people often go for a mortgage when there's like customer service issue. I know some people still go to the branch, and sometimes you can just take out more money at a branch than like say an ATM if you're like traveling somewhere else and need physical cash. But I don't know. I always wanted, maybe this is more like I want to see this versus like I think this will happen. But a couple of years ago, I was interviewing startups and they were exploring the idea of like pop-ups, because they were digital only brands that wanted the pop-up. And I really love this idea because I still think like that in-person presence, I don't know. I do not know why it captures people in a way that the easier option of just going online for it doesn't seem to capture it as much. But I sort of like to think of a branch as a pop-up experience. And like what I've heard, there's branches in the US that would be sort of like an Apple Genius bar to like train people on how to use their mobile banking app. Of course, it should be easy enough for people to just use it, but there's plenty of mobile banking apps that aren't that intuitive to use. So like that's another use case.
Yeah, but we are going as a society to an extreme where soon there won't be any reason to get out of our house or up there and our
Yeah.
computer, right? So then
Well,
it's going
yes,
to become what some of the older generation says, I want to go to the bank.
for
It's
fun.
for social. Mary, we have to wrap up because our conversation was an
It's
open-ended
extended edition.
conversation. It took many turns from fintech and yoga and neobanks and wealth techs, and we've traveled all over the place.
We have traveled. Thank you for these twists and turns. It's forcing
Yeah.
my brain to think.
Yeah. So next time we're going to pick another interesting open-ended topic and go down the lanes and see. Overall, I must say that I'm excited and hopeful that there will be more innovation that we haven't. FinTech is definitely not done. It's becoming a bit boring.
Yes. Did you see the headline? Banks are loving calling themselves boring right now. Just
Woo-hoo.
as a like,
Say,
banks are saying I'm boring. That's good, but that's because the runs.
yeah, exactly. So, Mary,
No,
thank you so much for this wonderful conversation.
thanks for having me. It's such a pleasure to chat with you.